Hello everyone, this is TobeTada with another video of crypto trading. Thanks for checking by and let's dive right in. So for today, let's have another look at Bitcoin and Steem. We're trading against US dollars and also to one another. In the last video, we analyzed this movement here and we argued that basically this strong upward spike of about 40% was already the end of this upward movement for this smaller cycle here. And that afterwards we would be seeing a downward trend. And exactly this has been happening. So we have been first seen a correction down to about 9,000, then again an upward movement to about 9,500, and then this point here, which indeed I was not quite sure if the price would bounce up again, or as we see now, would be going down. However, the bigger trend, I guess you could say, was quite confirmed. And I based this on the analysis of past movements such as this, because we basically, when we have a strong upward movement or an impulse wave, this can be, or this can happen in a very short time, as we saw, for example, here, which is then followed by a much longer downward trend. Or if there is a bigger cycle, this impulse wave can be indeed much longer, which indeed started back here already. And then if it's a bigger wave, then we are also going to have a longer time for this upward movement. So this was basically end of December to end of June, so that was basically more than half a year. And for this, it's really important to know in what kind of cycle you're in, because the longer or the bigger trend is what is important for mid-term to long-term trading. The short-term trading stuff is quite difficult, and if you're a beginner, basically also like me, it's important to look out for those mid-term and long-term perspectives. And now what I've learned in the last years when analyzing this is that basically we have these waves according to Elliott wave theory, and that works pretty well compared, also combined with analyzing fractals to read and predict how the market will develop. And so right now, this is basically the idea, is that we had this impulse wave and resulting correction which lasted until about here. We predicted this correction to about 8,200 based on the Fibonacci ratios, which I can again show. The idea is that Bitcoin tends to correct itself to this 0.618 ratio here, which quite well worked. It indeed a little bit varied, but that is to be expected. It's never going to be a 100% fit. And so after that, we had again this very strong movement, upward movement of 40%, indicating that this correction is very likely completed. And so if we have such a strong correction, upward movement, I guess, of here, and we can look at this in the hourly chart as well, you should always keep in mind that this is very likely the completion of the impulse wave for this cycle here. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5 going upward, and then we basically had a correction of, you could label this perhaps as a WXY, for example, the resulting correction for this subwave here. Right about here, I marked a triangle because it was not quite clear if this was going to be a downward triangle here, as an A, B, C, D, E, and then there were some others as well who expected the price to bounce upwards from here again. This did not happen, and that also shows how difficult it is to actually correctly predict trading. But I would argue that this is quite short-term perspective. So the important thing is that we're probably, very likely, going to see an upward movement from one of these points here. So for midterm and long-term trading, that's not so important if we basically see a correction going upwards again here or here. And you can see that the prices basically come down from up there to down here, about 18%. And in terms of Fibonacci ratios, we analyze the subwave here. We basically are already quite below this 0.618 ratio, and indeed almost to this 0.382 ratio. So I fully expect this to be a complete correction here, and that combined with these support lines, or supports coming from around here and here, the correction is very likely completed, meaning that the price will from around here go upwards again. And if this is indeed going to be a large breakout, we can expect the price to go up to about 11,000, somewhere around here, before we have this fairly strong resistance coming up from combining these two peaks here, going to around this level here. And then we'll very likely see another correction. But from around here to around here, it's, quote, only 34%, so it's less than this jump here. And indeed, we should be seeing something like that if the general trend is confirmed that we're basically in a very long but very strong upwards phase here. So those are my thoughts on Bitcoin and USD trading pair. Let's have a look at Steem and US dollar. And I think that looks very good as well. In the past, we analyzed this movement in more detail, and I argued that we'd probably see a low point of price of about 8 to 11 cents of Steem, and indeed the price went down to about 11 cents at the end of October here. And you can also see from this movement right here that we're seeing somewhat of a foundation here. We're not seeing a continuation of a downward trend. And from a longer perspective, it also means this is a little bit difficult to correctly label. I haven't seen a very one labeling technique that I would say is completely accurate. So I'm just going to carefully label this as a ABC in this way, with a note that this might not be completely correct within Elliott wave theory. However, I believe the more important part is that we've reached the end of this very long correction phase here, which was started in January 2018, and it has been going now for, I guess, almost 2 years now. And in the big perspective, of course, this means we had a very strong upward phase here, and then going back downward here. And so if this is indeed the foundation here to build on the upward movement starting for the next cycle, this is indeed a very good time for buying right now, because the price will only go upwards here. And you can see for the short term here that the price has stabilized. We have some support lines coming from around 12 cent, almost 13 cent marks, and upwards here again as well. There's some building some support in that case. So the likelihood of the price falling below these support lines is reduced. And I think that's a really good sign for Steem in general, for at least the trading pair with US dollars. If we look at Steem and Bitcoin trading pair, we saw that basically from August to around this time we had a very flat movement here, and some weeks ago when I analyzed this, I noticed that we had this upward movement here and that we had a support line which was breached in October. But you can see that since then the price has been steadily going upwards again, and we had a 22% increase over Bitcoin from Steem's perspective here. And so I think that's a pretty good sign as well, because we could be seeing, as you can see here, a further downward movement, which has been the only thing that's been doing basically since early 2018. So again, I think this is a very good indicator that we've reached bottom here, and that both Bitcoin and Steem are going to have gains, with Steem being even more bullish, obviously. So let me know what you think. I think the outlook for both of these cryptos are quite positive, and that if you're thinking about investing, the time right now would be pretty good for that. So see you next video. Bye.